What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today I'm doing a deck profile for Scizor-GX. It's a card that I have been very excited about for a while now. It wasn't as good in Worlds format because Zoro Control kind of ran all over it because of its malleable damage output, but I think it has a chance in our current standard format to be somewhere on the tier list. Also, I'm switching from PTCGO deck manager to using Proxy Croak deck images for my deck profile, so let me know what you think about that. It's easier to see all of the cards at once on the screen as opposed to PTCGO, where they've kind of added some space in between the lines of cards and you can't see them all on the screen at the same time. So we're starting out with the 3-2 Zoroark line, 3 Zorua, 2 Zoroark-GX. Zoroark here is not it's not a Zoroark-GX variant, this deck. So Zoroark is there for draw support and a backup attacker. He is not the main point of this deck. I do have 3 Zorua in case 1 or even 2 are prized. You have the Zoruas because the draw support that Zoroark provides is very necessary, but like I said, the attacking with Zoroark is not as necessary. Most games I'll have 1, maybe 2 Zoroark-GX if I get lucky, but just 1 is usually enough to keep the deck running. Then we have our main Pokemon of the deck, 4 Scyther and 3 Scizor-GX. So Scizor-GX, it does for 1 metal and 1 colorless. Scizor-GX does 80 damage. Next turn, prevent 30 damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's attacks. And it's GX for 3 colorless. It does 100 damage, 100 more damage if the defending Pokemon is an evolution Pokemon. And Scizor's ability is when this Pokemon has 100 or less HP remaining, its attacks do 80 more damage. So that means its first attack would be doing 160 with this ability active, and Cross Cut would do 280 to an evolution Pokemon with the ability active. There's some numbers we can work with here with Dhelmise, which I'll get to when we get to Dhelmise. The Scyther's not the worst starter. You have twin plays, so if you go second, you can search out 2 more Scyther to your bench, but attaching an energy to the active Pokemon and it being 70 HP is usually really bad. We do have a couple 1 prize attackers, which I'll get to. I'm sorry, 1 energy attackers and also 1 prize attackers. The problem with Scizor-GX is that you need 2 energy essentially, either steel double colorless or steel for to attack, right? So if your opponent keeps sniping your Scythers, or you leave a Scyther active because you twin played and they knock it out, you're down in energy attachment, you have to start over. That's like the entire weakness of this deck. Next we have 1 Tapu Koko for Flying Flip and also for Free Retreat. Flying Flip, if you start out with it, it's such a good attacker. Normally it's kind of safe to go with a Flying Flip turn 1. Maybe they knock it out, maybe they don't. If they do knock it out, you can start trying to maybe spread energy around with Turbo Arm, or just leave somebody active and then bench sit a Scizor attach pass. But Flying Flip can really fix a lot of numbers. Also, it's Free Retreat, which is amazing in this format where we don't have Floatstone. Kartana-GX is a nice little disruption tool, which I didn't initially think I would like, but my friend Anthony Balone, shout out to Anthony, he said you should play Kartana, so I tried it out and it's not bad at all. It's really good against pretty much any Zoroark variant, because while you're healing yourself and reducing damage, another additional tool you have is remove 1 of their energy. Also, if you're having trouble taking that last prize, you can just use Blade GX for the game. Registeel, the first Registeel here, we have Turbo Arm. That's really all we're playing it for. It does 30 damage and attaches a basic energy from your discard to 1 of your benched Pokemon. So like I said, one of our problems with Scizor-GX is that it needs 2 energy to attack, and Registeel can fix this problem a bit. So you might be thinking, well, you attach 1 energy to Registeel and 1 energy to Scizor, you still need 2 turns to power up Scizor. So you're attaching energy to Registeel, you 30 Turbo Arm, Excel and energy to Scizor. Now, you've essentially attached 2 energy that turn to 2 separate Pokemon, so your opponent has to either go for your Scizor or Scyther, potentially knock that out, or knock out the Registeel, leaving your Scizor or Scyther safe. A lot of S's there. So it spreads out your energy and gives your opponent 2 targets. So they either have to Guzma and work for that Scyther or Scizor on the bench, or they can just hit the Registeel that's already in the active, allowing your Scizor to set up. Once this deck sets up, it's a beast. Like, I love this deck, but getting past that initial I need to attach 2 energy is the real hill that we have to climb over here. The other Registeel is really, really good. 120 HP. Its ability prevents 20 damage from all attacks done to it. So it's kind of like Mewtwo Pressure, the promo that we were seeing in Malamar a lot. It's very much like that. And its attack is very good as well. For a Metal and a DCE, it does 60, and if your opponent's if the defending Pokemon has an ability, you do 120. So this is knocking out Oranguru, it's knocking out Diancie, it's knocking out Hoopa, which is huge. It's also just doing 120 to Zoroark, and then they need a Kukui to kill you back. And it's just a 1 prizer, so it's really nice. Lastly, for the metal support, we have Dhelmise, which is just a bench-sitting Pokemon. You're never going to want this in your active. But it says all of your metal Pokemon do 10 more damage with their attacks. So your baby Registeels do 40 and 120 respectively, and most importantly, Scizor does 90 with 1 Dhelmise, or 100 with 2 Dhelmise on the bench with its first attack, and Crosscut with 1 Dhelmise if you're attacking into an evolution Pokemon will do 210, which is a magic number because Zoroark has 210 HP. So when Crosscut is buffed, it doesn't really matter because you're getting so when you've taken damage, when you have your ability active, Crosscut is doing 180 if the defending Pokemon is not evolution. So Dhelmise makes it 190. That means you're knocking out things like Buzzwole and Ho-Oh. And then if it is buffed by the ability and the defending Pokemon is an evolution, I don't think Dhelmise really matters there because the attack is doing an insane amount of damage at that point. The first attack is doing 80, 160 with the ability buff, 170 with 1 Dhelmise, 180 with 2 Dhelmise. You can see how that really matters because 170 and 180 are the most common HPs of basic GXs. 180 is probably the average, with 170 being a little below, 190 being a little above, but we can hit all of those numbers without even using Kukui because we have Dhelmise and that ability if Scizor gets hit. Then we're playing 2 Tapu Lele as our search Pokemon. We as our like basic just bench sitter. We could use Marshadow to shuffle draw 4. We could have maybe an Oranguru Instruct for a little extra draw support, but we have Zoroark-GX and supporters as our draw engine. So Tapu Lele-GX just helps us in the beginning turns and maybe a little later on if we need to search out like a Guzma or something. So just 2 Lele has seemed fine, but I could definitely understand if you wanted to make it 4, or I'm sorry, 3. 4 might be a little excessive. So now on to the trainers. We have 1 Rescue Stretcher, super important. We're not playing puzzles because puzzles are gone now. So you need to get back your Pokemon, and Super Rod is not in the format either, so Rescue Stretcher is the choice. I'm playing 4 Metal Frying Pan, so that might be a little excessive. I've been testing this deck slightly in the past week, but I put a lot of testing into it 2 weeks ago. And it all depends on how light people are going on their Field Blowers. I just want to make sure that Scizor-GX is taking the least amount of damage as possible. So I am playing 4 Metal Frying Pan, but you can probably cut that down to 3 Frying Pan, 1 Choice Band. That's definitely, that 4th Frying Pan is most certainly a flex spot. I just want to be consistently doing the same thing every game. 3 Acerola, because we're stopping a lot of damage. Healing is so good. If you get to a point where you have a Scizor-GX active with a metal and 1 other energy, and then you have a Scizor or Scyther on the bench with an energy, it feels unstoppable, because so your opponent swings into that 1 Scizor, you Acerola into a new Scizor, and a lot of decks like Zoroark decks can potentially have to 3-shot your Scizor. because of Metal Frying Pan and your damage reduction from your attack. And if you're playing against maybe Trashalanche or Malamar and they're playing with Psychic attackers, you can reduce a total of 80 damage a turn because of Resistance, Frying Pan, and your attack's damage reduction. So you will have a lot of opportunities to heal with Acerola. We're playing 2 Lillie. That's usually what you want to play turn 1. So you want to try to empty your hand out, play Lillie, get a couple more basic Pokemon, and get on with the game. It's okay later in the game, but Cynthia is your better draw support later on. We're playing 3 Nest Ball. That could go up to 4. Like I said, it's kind of preference. I have a couple extra tools in this deck, like the second Dhelmise, the Registeel with Silver Fist, the 4th Metal Frying Pan. So if you wanted to cut any of those, you could potentially go up to a 4th Nest Ball for consistency. Then we have 2 Copycat, another draw support that's usually better later on in the game. But with the Rayquaza decks around the Tempest GX, if your opponent goes to a 10-card hand, you could go to a 10-card hand. Now, if you wanted to instead of being passive and drawing 10 cards yourself, you could replace these Copycats with Judges to combat Rayquaza, which would not be a bad idea at all. But Rayquaza, it's kind of, this matchup I'll get into, but it's kind of, if they run hot, I don't think you're going to beat them anyway. And Judge, if they're running hot, they're going to get through Judge. I've seen it happen plenty of times in the past week of testing Rayvika. Then we're playing 4 Cynthia, best draw supporter we have in the game, playing 4 of it. Some Zoroark decks might play 3, but this isn't really a Zoroark deck. Zoroark is just there because we lost Octillery, and that's the draw support I would rather use. But for Cynthia, it's a great card. You should be playing 4 of it. 2 Field Blower. This could probably be cut down. This is one of the only GX decks I've tested that I think has a fighting chance versus Baby Buzz, Garbodor, Shrine. And Field Blower helps a lot there, getting rid of the shrines. Because Scizor can reduce so much damage done to it, the tick damage from Regirocks and Garbodors and Baby Buzzes don't matter as much as it does against other GX attacks. And if you can remove their shrine as well, you can actually come out on top of that matchup. So I do like the Field Blowers, but if you're not expecting to run into a lot of Shrine of Punishments, then you could go ahead and cut those blowers. For Guzma, I think it's just a great card to have 4 of in most decks since we don't have Puzzle of Time anymore. You could cut the 4th Guzma for a Pal Pad, however, or possibly the 3rd Acerola for a Pal Pad, but I'd like to keep the 3rd Acerola myself. We're playing 4 Ultra Ball to search out Pokemon. We don't have Timer Ball, but I don't usually feel the need for Timer Ball because I don't need to flood the board with stage 1s. I really just need my 1 Zoroark-GX and my 1 Scizor-GX and we're good to go. You could possibly try an Olivia in place of maybe the 4th Guzma or one of the Field Blowers, because Olivia is solid, but a lot of times you also need to draw a card. So I usually just want to Cynthia or Copycat turn 2, depending on my opponent's hand size. And then we have 7 Metal Energy and 4 DCE. I tried 8 Metal Energy. It seemed like it was probably too much. If you're using Registeel, something probably already got knocked out, so you have energy in the discard from that happening. And then the 4 DCE, because we have Crosscut, Riotous Beating, Flying Flip, Silver Fist, Gale Blade, a lot of attacks that DCE can be used, even on Tapu Lele-GX. So this deck is fairly passive and defensive, and it's also pretty tempo based. But once it gets going, like I said, if you have a Scizor-GX active with 2 energy and a Scyther on the bench with another energy, you can just start an Acerola loop, and with the Metal Frying Pans and that first attack from Scizor reduces damage. It's really hard to knock out. So if you have a Metal Frying Pan on your Scizor-GX and you attack with the first attack doing 80, reducing 30 damage next turn, reducing 60 damage as long as Metal Frying Pan sticks on you. Most decks aren't running Field Blowers, at least in high counts right now. So that means Scizor, you need to deal 260 damage to it to one-shot it, if all of those requirements are met. So 260 damage, let's say from a Rayquaza GX, means they would have to have 9 energy or 8 energy and a Choice Band in play to one-shot your Scizor-GX. Now, if this is turn 2, I don't think many Vika Rays are going to have 9 energy or the output of 260 plus damage on their board. So you could get 2 hit, or they might just pass to not activate your ability, allowing you to one-shot them. But this does give you the opportunity to start setting up another Scyther, so you can loop, maybe Koko spread to soften things up. You can swing with Registeel, either Registeel, honestly, to soften up Rayquazas, because your Silver Fist is doing 120 and it's a pesky 1 Pradzer to knock out. Crosscut GX, keep in mind, can one-shot Vikavolt. If, let's say, turn 2, you have Guzma Crosscut GX on their only Vikavolt, they don't have another Grubbin in play, that's a great way to get ahead on Scizor, on Rayquaza with Scizor, because then they won't have their energy acceleration. I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about Ray, but Ray is one of the, like, solid midpoints in our meta right now that you need to test against. So, like, a deck, I don't think you should play a deck if it doesn't beat Ray right now. Scyther Scizor-GX is really good against most Zoroark variants. It's good against Zoropod. It's actually a really fun matchup to play because it turns into a 2-shot war in Acerola, and who can manage their resources better, and who makes the nice 2-shot Guzmaing up a Zoroark from the bench. It's really cool. A Zoroark Lycanroc is also a close match. Zoroark Ninetales or Ninetales Zoroark. You do have the weakness on them, but we're not playing Choice Band. But you are still favored. You also have Silver Fist, which can do 70 with a Dhelmise 140. You can do some nice damage to the Alolan Ninetales. You can also get through their Luminous Barrier Alolan Ninetales with Silver Fist Registeel. What else? We have Buzzrock decks, which pre-Worlds we had Scizor was testing really, really well against Buzzrock, and it lost some stuff now, so it's a little bit of a slower deck. It's not as aggro as it was, but it still is a good deck. I believe Buzzrock My Cargo was my previous upload to the channel. You can check that out if you want a good list for that. So I think Scizor-GX is pretty well-rounded. I think it's a solid tier 2 deck right now. We have so many viable archetypes in the format. The tier lists are pretty large at the moment, in my opinion at least. We have a lot of decks that can do well, a lot of decks that are kind of doing the same thing in different ways. And then we have those one-shot decks like Duskmane, Magnezone, and Ray that are kind of solidifying the tier 1 meta, in my opinion. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Scizor-GX deck profile. I've been getting a lot of requests to make an updated version from my World's Scizor-GX deck profile. Like I said, there's a lot of flex spots in here, so do with it what you will. Just have fun with the deck. It's a lot of fun to play, and I do think it has some competitive viability. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.